The next storyteller I want to invite up for us is Larry Curtis. When I asked Larry when the last time he faced an obstacle was, he told me, "I'm 86. I have to remember to get here." So without further ado, I'm going to invite Larry forward.
Good evening. Nice to be with you, and what an inspiration these two women are. I came here from Vermont, and the multiple people in Vermont are French Canadians. Come here and find a congregation that has 34 people from 34 nations was just an incredible experience for me, and a very, very wonderful one. My name's Lawrence Curtis. I'm a clergyman in the New England Conference, a Methodist denomination, and my wife, Helen Dickey Curtis, is a retired registered nurse worked mostly in cardiology. Pastors like to take a rest on Mondays. But what do you do on Monday? Nobody else is around. They're all working. So figuring out what to do on Mondays has always taken a little bit of doing. My wife and I have lived most of our adult lives on Lake Champlain. Now, Lake Champlain is the lake that separates New York State from New England. It's 130 miles long. The north end of it is in Canada. It's 400 feet deep, which is the lowest point in the United States east of the Continental Divide. The north end, as I say, is in Canada, and it drains into the St. Lawrence River, which is not named after me, but some guy in the early church who gave all the church's money to the poor before the Roman senators could get there. Some things don't change. Helen and I looked at a cottage for our day off and for vacations. Way too expensive. Well, working together for our doctoral degrees, an extension seminar at Middlebury, Vermont, an extension from Drew Theological School, an Episcopal priest friend of mine and I talked about a boat he found on the bottom of the lake. Not where it was 400 feet deep, thankfully, but someplace near shore, and he floated the boat. He refurbished it, took it sailing, and he always took a lot of books out with him because it didn't have a motor on it, and he'd go out there and the wind would die, and he'd get a lot of reading done. One summer, he was put in charge of the Episcopal summer camp in Cooperstown. So he said, "Larry, why don't you sail my boat for the summer?" So I sailed the boat with an old auxiliary motor that he had added from Sears Roebuck in about 1790. And Helen and I took the boat, and Helen and the kids all learned to sail. Not long after that, we bought our first sailboat. In the log of the Reverie, which is a sailboat that we eventually had, you read, "The Great Lakes are ringed not only with large cities, but also with lots of small towns." Now, you're familiar with different groups of different nationalities being in different parts of different communities of New York City or different communities around here. Well, in the Great Lakes, they're scattered like pearls all around the lakes. And each town is often settled by some different country. One such town is a town called Kincardine. It's way at the western side of the province of Ontario. And It has a small lighthouse in the harbor. It has a windy staircase that goes around the lighthouse till you get up to the top, and it has the little walkway around the top just below the light. And every night, a man goes up there with his bagpipes. Now, Kincardine, as you might guess, is a Scottish place. And so the man goes up there in his kilt and plays the bagpipes. And if you go to Kincardine, you can hear him. Well, one summer we decided to take a sail with our boat. We had gotten a sailing boat that we could live on for a while, and we had to figure out, well, what kind of a sailboat do you need to really live on it for a time? Because you can't live on a little dinghy for all summer. So we figured out about the smallest boat you could have and really live on it is about a 30-foot boat. So we had a 30-foot boat, and actually just over, we had lakefront, 31 feet on each side. And in the log of the Reverie, you read, "The lakes are ringed not only with some large cities, but also with lots of small towns. Like neighborhoods in the cities, the towns are often settled from different ethnic groups in different countries. And one such town is Kincardine, the western edge of Ontario. The small lighthouse at the harbor, with a staircase spiraling up to the light, and the same name, and the name declares that it's a Scottish village. One year, long ago, a family from Scotland determined that they were going to go to Kincardine and settle there. So they took a boat from Port Huron at the south end of the lake to go up to Kincardine and become a part of that community. So here's this man from Scotland with his family traveling up the Lake Huron to the end of Ontario to this little Scottish town. And they got up to almost to Kincardine when a huge storm came up. And the storm was tossing the boat every which way, and water was pouring over the side. And they thought, we're never going to make it. We're going to be dashed on the rocks, and we're all going to be killed. Well, what does a Scotsman do? He goes below, of course, and gets his bagpipes. Came up on the deck and began to play a lament on his bagpipes, if you can imagine what that is. And so he brought his bagpipes up on deck in the storm and began to play a lament for the loss of his family and for the loss of the crew. But on shore, there was a hardy Scotsman, and he heard the sound of the pipes, took his pipes, climbed up onto the lighthouse, and began to play. The boat crew heard the pipes from on shore, followed the sound safely into the harbor, and all were saved. Now today, you can go to Kincardine, go to Ontario, go west, and when you get to the lake, somewhere along the lake there, you'll find this little Scottish town, and you can go and you can hear the piper play, because they still play the pipes from the lighthouse, so that you can hear them in the harbor. And we heard them when we were there on our sloop Reverie, and visiting the cities and towns along the Great Lakes. You can imagine the wonderful log that we had in our Reverie with such towns as this. Thank you.